folks, and welcome to the Anti-Heroes podcast with your host, Zach Blair. I am Zach Blair. Hey there, how you doing? You know, I haven't done this in a while, but I'm just going to give you a rundown of what this show is if this is your first time listening. What this show is me interviewing guitar players I like, guitar players that I'm interested in, guitar players that I think are doing something cool and creative and bringing their own voice to the conversation. This congested conversation that we've been having with the electric guitar over the last several decades, adding their own contribution, saying something, bringing something to the table. I feel like the same guys kind of get lauded for their input, and I love those guys too. I love the guitar heroes, the guys that are celebrated and lauded. But I've always been a little more interested in the guys that aren't getting as much recognition and that aren't getting as much praise, but they still do it because they have to do it. They're compelled to do it. They are artists. They have something to say, and they're going to say it no matter who's listening, how many people are listening. Or, we've had people on here that have a lot of people listening, and they're still carving out their own sort of corner of the world here. So now that I have that out of the way, if this is your first time, then hopefully you didn't just turn this podcast off and you're still with me and you're still listening. Today is family. I've had a few of these episodes. I had my brother on. I had the guys in the Riverboat Gamblers. And today is joining right along with those folks in my life. This is Mr. Tim Mcllrath from the band that I'm in, Rise Against. This is a very special one. It's a very near and dear to my own heart because, this is my partner. This is the guy that I check in with on a daily basis, that I make music with, and I play guitar with. Most importantly, we have this vernacular and this ongoing conversation that I don't share with at this point anyone else. And I'm very proud of our guitar partnership, as I coined the phrase guitartnership. Guitartner. Anyway, and I'm very, very proud of it, and I hold it very near and dear to my heart. My relationship with this guy. I also love him as a human being. He's a great person, and also a great friend. And it's funny because him and I don't really, as we talk about, we don't really analyze what we do. We just do it. We both have specific voices on the instrument, and we've grown to sort of know each other's styles over the last 17 years. How could you not? And we know what each other is good at. So it's just an unspoken thing. You're going to do that. I'm going to do this. That's just, but we haven't really analyzed that much or dissected it much. I guess maybe in fear of ruining what makes it special. But we get to do that here. And I was really happy that we got to do that here. I'm really proud of this episode. Tim's a guy that, he doesn't want to ruin the magic, as you'll hear. He doesn't want to analyze too much of what's going on. He doesn't want to get too in the weeds with gear. He wants to, as you hear him say, just doesn't want it to sound shitty. He knows the things he likes. He knows how to get good sounds out of those things, and he carries on. He's a true artist. He's a true songwriter, singer, guitar player. But didn't say it too much in this interview, but Tim's not merely a guy that just picked up guitar and filled a void of rhythm guitar in a band because it needed to be filled. And rather than adding another member to play guitar, he just started doing himself. Tim is a guitar player. Tim has a voice on the electric guitar, and I'm a big, big fan of that voice and of his playing. And again, I'm just really, really happy and thankful that I get to play guitar with this guy, man. I get to show up every day and stand next to him and play guitar for you folks, hopefully. I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let you hear my conversation with Tim Mcllrath. I'm going to have to do this one the way I've done, like with my brother or with the Gambler guys.
Uh-huh.
And pretend that I don't know all of these answers. I
Okay.
mean, because I know where you live, and I live there
That
too.
sounded kind of threatening just now.
I know where you live, and I'll come by, and I'll set your fucking house on fire. No,
It's already been on fire once, so
oh
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just
Well, we
bring it
can talk
on.
about that.
Bring it on.
All right. Um, but we've commiserated for 17 years and talked about everything there is under the sun. So I know these answers, and you know what I'm going to ask, but we'll we'll get we'll get dorky. And I
Yeah.
know you're a guy.
Your listeners don't, right? So we will
No, they
do
don't.
this with the listeners in mind. We'll keep inside jokes out of it, right? We'll, like
I
people
mean,
don't
maybe.
tune out, maybe, or we'll just completely we'll screw this whole thing up,
Yeah,
and then you'll have to erase it, and then we'll
yeah.
have to start over again tomorrow or something.
Well, again, I know where you live, so I'll track you
I
down.
said you, but I meant like I'll screw this whole thing up. So,
You're an old pro at this. You're an old pro, and we're
no.
we're all pros at talking about detailed bullshit. Uh, it's fucking horseshit. So, I'll just start. Like, how did you? And I know the answer. How did you start playing guitar?
Oh, okay. Geez, it would have been like junior high, maybe like sixth or seventh grade, which for me would have been like 91,
Hmm.
maybe 1990, 91. So this is like probably the era as like glam metal was starting to fade a little bit, like late 80s, and then it was starting to get replaced by like grunge and that kind of thing that was getting on the air.
Yeah,
I had older sisters. Their music was more like it was glam metal. I heard like Motley Crue from them. I heard like Guns N' Roses from them, and I found my way into like Metallica and like heavier stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, and then got into punk around that time too, just because as the grunge world was coming into, like punk was like happening in its peripheral as well. And I just wanted to. I was like, I heard this music and I just wanted to play guitar. I heard these bands. I think it was like Minor Threat made me want to play guitar. Like
yeah,
hearing that like super like like ferocious and feral guitar tone. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And so I was still a kid. I was like 13 probably, and I'm turning to my parents and I was like, I want to learn how to play guitar, and they were supportive, and they ended up like they didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. It's like before internet. I ended up one of those like group like classical guitar classes, like
Oh
classical
wow.
nylon string,
Hmm.
where they're just like teaching you like Eleanor Rigby, or something.
Yeah,
My mom's like dropped me off at the place, and I knew that wasn't my thing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I was like, this isn't. But at that point, you don't even know what like distortion is. You don't know what creates it. You
Sure,
know?
sure.
I'm like, why does this not sound like Black Flag? What's happening here? You know?
Right.
Um, and then eventually, just kind of kept playing on my own, figured out like power chords, and then, got into my first electric guitar, which happened to be, I was visiting a friend in Indiana, and he had a guitar in his closet that he had tried to learn and then gave up on it. He sold it to me for $30, and it was an electric guitar. I found out years later, it was a 1951 Kalamazoo.
Whoa. Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Kind of like pre-Gibson,
Sure.
It was like it's this white like Stratocaster kind of body with a matching amp and then like the coiled up like cable. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
that whole thing. And that was my first time playing an electric guitar, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then even that amp, like when you turned it up, had a little bit of distortion to it. And then I was just off to the races. I was just like in my basement, just like woodshed, like trying to
Yeah.
recreate my favorite bands.
I bet, hey, we've talked about that guitar before, and I bet it's worth money. I mean, actually, I know it's worth money. I remember there was a Kalamazoo SG style guitar in the like local pawn shop that I wanted real bad when I was younger. But yeah, those are worth quite a bit of money. Do you still have that?
Somewhere, I would say that your friend Tim didn't treat it with the utmost respect. So
Right.
if it was worth money, it's probably not anymore. It's a very like cheaply made guitar. It's one of those almost like Sears brand kind of guitars,
Yeah.
It's small body. Um, I actually left it. Neil Hennessy, you know Neil
Oh yeah.
from the Lawrence Arms and Joyce Manor and Sparta and countless other
Shouts.
projects.
Shouts
Shout out to
outs.
Neil. Shouts
Shout
out
out
to
to Neil.
Neil. Well, Neil and I have been best friends since we were like 16 years old, and we did our first band together.
Yeah.
Like we taught each other how to play, um, that kind of thing. And I remember leaving that guitar at his house after I upgraded to like an SG, my 82 SG, and and then that guitar disappeared for like 15 years. I kind of forgotten about it, kind of gave up on it. His parents moved after we graduated high school, and he brought it to me on my 30th birthday. I think it was my 30th birthday. He brought me the guitar. He found it like in his parents' basement. They
Whoa.
had moved to like Wisconsin or something, and he had just found the guitar. We thought it was like long lost, and it was like this amazing present. It was like, holy crap, this guitar from my past.
I think I remember that. I remember you telling me
Hmm.
that. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
It's cool. I don't know where it is actually at the moment, but you're right. I should probably locate it. But
Well, and because I know I the thing about your guitar playing is very interesting to me, and I've done a deep dive in your guitar playing, of course, as we kind of have.
whether you wanted to or not, you've been
No, I mean
in the peripheral of it for far too long.
I very much wanted to, and I think like we've had to study each other's thing, because we are,
Yeah,
and I've trademarked this phrase, a guitartnership.
I
What do you
love
think?
copyright Z
Copyright,
Blair.
copyright
Yeah.
Z Blair, guitartnership.
Mm.
Um, and the thing about your playing, and it's so fascinating, is that no matter what you think it is, there's always something else going on. When I joined the band, I thought I had a lock. And I realized if it was one of your riffs, it was always something else. And I had never I mean, my ear had never failed me so much. You know what I mean? And that's the one thing about your playing that I think is so fascinating and interesting. There's always something else going on, whether it's your background with like acoustic guitar playing or whatever it might be, where you usually have a sort of melody line happening within the riff. And so it's not just a bar chord. That's the thing about Rise Against. When people like have been fans of ours and maybe they're a guitar player, I'll always tell them it's not just a bar chord. It's never just a bar chord, really. You know, take the riff to the violence, for instance, the riff to
Hmm.
survive. It's never just a bar chord, and that's intrinsic to your styling, your guitar playing, and I've always been such a fan of that. Do you know where that sort of that kind of came in with you? Maybe those influences you pulled from.
I guess well, thank you for saying that.
That's
I
it's true.
I think like I was always really drawn to just the sound and the tone, and that's what's always motivated me to play or to write is just literally like what it sounds like. And I love playing like 'cause I learned how to play guitar just by myself in my basement.
Sure.
But then when I started playing with a second guitar player, like I loved the idea that we could play complementary things that then turned the sound into something that was like made you feel a certain way, like had this depth
Right.
to it. And it was something that I was always to this day way more concerned with like how it makes you feel than anything else. Like how does that tone like make you feel, and how does a guitar make you feel anything at all? Like, it's kind of incredible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like this voice, and so I don't know. I think that my guitar playing was always inspired by developing that sort of tone that we could create together. So, like you said, like we're rarely just playing a guitar power chord, but if one of us are playing a power chord, then the other guy's playing something else. So,
Right.
and then it creates this sound that you're like, what is that even? Like, how are they
Right.
making that? You know, or if it's not even something that's like asking you or making you ask questions how they did it, it's at least making you feel a certain way. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So, and
Sure.
that, I think that's what's given Rise Against like its sound is that we're not just playing like in its essence, it's just very simple, like 3/4 chord, you know, punk and pop kind of like
Sure.
structures, you know.
Sure.
But then, like any band, you add your own little flavor to it, and all of a sudden it gives it this different feel, and it pulls you in this different direction, and
Right.
it makes your sound like a little bit unique. And I've loved that interplay between like your guitar playing and my guitar playing because we go out there and we're like, hey, if you're doing this, I'm going to do this. Like
Right.
if you're doing something low and heavy, I'm gonna do something higher so it kind of like fills in the gaps there. And then you have
Right.
and then it creates this kind of wall of sound.
Well, it's almost like an earn your keep thing too. It's because why would we play the same thing? We're standing right next to each other.
Right.
It might just sound louder, but
Mhm.
why not utilize the sort of musicality of this whole thing? I could be doing something completely different. And I've said this a bunch on this podcast when I've talked to other people that are in guitar partnerships. The I read an interview a long time ago with Bob Weir of all people from the Grateful Dead, and he used a phrase that him and Jerry Garcia were always weaving, and and
Yeah.
that was a great way to explain what you and me do as well. If it's a part where you're playing a bar chord, I am almost playing a lead guitar solo, and vice versa. If I go to
Yeah.
we're always doing that. And then if somebody asks me how to play a song of ours, well, it's like shit. I can show you my side of it, but I don't.
Right.
A lot of times I don't know your side of it, and
That's
you
that's
know,
so true. That's so tr it's so true because I don't know how to play a lot of our songs.
me
Like for
neither.
example, like Prayer of the Refugee, right?
Right,
I don't really know the rhythm of the verses. You know what I mean?
right, right.
I think it was only until we did like the Ghost Note stuff, or if I'd been asked to do like an acoustic version of it, I had to figure it out. And bear in mind, like I wrote those parts, but like for
Sure.
the last like 15 years, I've just done the bam, 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 bam,
Yeah,
bam, while you guys do the rhythm, and so it's slowly eked its way out of my brain to the point where
yeah,
I'm like, man, I think I know it, but I don't really know it, you know? Like
yeah.
you said, we've divvied up our parts, you know? And then
And
if
that's what we
like,
do.
and like you said, like if it's like, if I'm holding down a power chord, something really low, it's like, I'm already doing it. We don't need
Right.
two guys to do it. Sometimes you do. Sometimes it's like, it's cool and
Sure,
you want to like emphasize it.
sure.
Otherwise, like, yo, dude, I got this. So actually, you can go do whatever you want to do right now.
Yeah, you can
You
go
know?
have a smoke.
Heck.
Uh, well, that's the truth,
Yeah.
though. And even now with writing, we're working on new stuff. It's like there's been times when it's like I'm just going to cut out and not do anything. I'm not even
And
going to
that's,
make a noise
yes,
over here. You know.
totally. And I know I'm a broken record because you've been stuck in a band with me for so long. But like sometimes the most important thing that you play in a song is the thing that you don't play at all. Is
Absolutely,
like is choosing to like back out and be like, because your absence creates a dynamic. You
absolutely.
know, not
Because
everyone needs to be playing. If you don't feel compelled to play something, don't just fill the space to fill the space, you know. But
mm-hmm,
especially like our like our dynamic is not so different than like the loud, quiet, loud that we talk about, which is
sure,
what the Pixies named their documentary, which
yeah,
is came from how Kurt Cobain described the Pixies sound. He called the Pixies like loud, quiet, loud, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And you could see in Nirvana's writing how that influenced him, you know, like the
absolutely,
Nirvana's biggest songs are loud, quiet, loud, you know?
yeah,
And I've always been like worshipped at that altar, you know?
sure,
And so songs like, you know, Prayer of the Refugee, go like loud, quiet, loud. Um, and but if to achieve that dynamic, maybe someone's got to stop playing in
yeah.
the verses.
And
And
even if
like
the
what that does is that it comes back in that much heavier
right,
in the choruses. Chorus is that much bigger. If everyone's playing, then the chorus just kind of like, you know, floats its way in. But if I'm not playing, because if you watch Rise Against You, you'll watch me not playing in a lot of the verses.
absolutely,
Or if I am playing, it's just like a single note, it's just something ambient, you know, because I
yeah,
love coming in with you guys in the chorus, and all of a sudden it's like pow, like we just pushed some button.
yeah. Or even holding a note out,
Right.
sitting on the ones, just boom.
Mm,
Yeah, we do that quite a bit, and it's really interesting. Once I was thinking about, because I don't think about you and I don't think about what we do so much. We just do it.
right, right.
It is. We are our lot in life. We are the guitar players in Rise Against,
Hmm.
and very lucky to be so. And but it's not something I give a lot of thought. It's like eating or sleeping or whatever. I play in the guitar with you in a band, and when I do think about it, it is interesting that I've never played the intro riff to Savior, our biggest song, you know,
Right.
and and I kind of like that in a weird way. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I like that we
yeah.
have our roles, and I like that we service different parts in our band. But when I first joined the band, there was more and more. You have sort of slowly started playing more guitar live and on records during my tenure with the band, which has been 17 years now, which is fucking crazy. Um,
Mm.
and I always thought once when I got in, I always thought, why isn't this guy playing guitar a lot more? And I know it's because we are in a punk band, and there's some songs that you sort of sing. Was that a concerted effort on your part to sort of start playing guitar more because you wanted to, or is it just because of the songs you started writing?
I mean, it happened organically. Like the bands I played in before Rise Against, I was always a guitar player and a singer. I had never been just a singer. I had never like just walked out onto a stage with a microphone. That was a
Right.
foreign concept to me. It was something that was like took me a minute to like even wrap my head around, you
Yeah.
know? Like
Yeah.
ask anybody who plays a guitar, like ask them to take that guitar off and go to a microphone. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's uncomfortable. The guitar you
Yeah.
can kind of hide behind a guitar, you know? Like just a singer, it sounded so like Axl Rose to me, you know? I was just
Yeah.
like, what am I gonna do? Put a scarf on my mic stand here and dance around? Like what do you
Yes.
do here? You know?
Answer yes.
Yeah. And that said, I mean, obviously there's so many great hardcore singers that are just singers. You know, Henry Rollins is not Axl Rose, neither is Ian MacKaye, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
like, but for me, it just felt like, well, I'm also not Henry Rollins or Ian MacKaye. And so, but when the band first started, it started with a batch of instrumental music that Joe had put together. And so it didn't need a second guitar player, you know, it just needed
Yeah.
like someone to sing over it. And that was what became the Unraveling.
Yeah.
Um, and so I kind of put the guitar down and walked into this and wrote the vocals and the lyrics and put out our first record. It got signed to Fat Records. But I never lost that guitar player or that songwriter in me when I started taking the microphone, you
Yeah.
know. And so when we dug into a second album, which would become Revolutions Per Minute, you know, I just had ideas bubbling up, and I was like, what if we did this? What if we did this? You know?
Hmm.
And then it became like, oh, Tim's gonna play guitar on a handful of songs because he wrote songs that involved two guitar parts, like that dynamic that we were talking about.
Sure.
That was like Heaven Knows was one of our first two guitar songs, or I can't think like Torches, like a couple of those. But then I'd also play on like the Angel and that kind of thing. And then we became like a two guitar band, but I was only picking up the guitar for like three or four songs,
Yeah.
like in that first time out with RPM, you know, because we were still doing mostly Unraveling. A lot of RPM didn't need two guitars. So I'm only picking it up. But I had a model for that, which was Pegboy. Like I grew up
Right.
watching Pegboy play, and Larry would pull a guitar out just for a handful of songs. Um, and so it doesn't seem that weird to me. It was like I'll have the guitar here ready to go just for these few songs, the same way Pegboy would do it. And then slowly, like that through those three or four songs, as we wrote more records, it just turned into five songs, and then six songs, and then seven songs, and then our good songs were two guitar songs, you know, a lot of
Right.
them, and our popular ones at least. And and now it's to the point where we could do a whole set where I'm like I'm
Yeah.
playing guitar. It's rare to see me not on the guitar now, which is a full circle from 20 years ago when it was rare to
Absolutely.
see me on a guitar. So now people I think of me as probably the guy who plays guitar and sings. And unless we
Right.
play, I mean, what do we got? Give It All, Collapse, Chamber, like you know, like
Yeah.
stuff like that that rolls in there, which doesn't not only doesn't need two guitars, but there's such intricate punk songs. I don't think I would trust myself to play the guitar and sing along
I
during those
would
songs.
singing at the same time would be so hard.
So yeah, and I do like that. I came into it like hesitantly as like just a front man, you know, but I came to enjoy it,
Sure.
and I also enjoyed my ability to wrangle a crowd. Um, was easier to do without a guitar sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like, because I can kind of stomp around that stage. I can get your attention. I can
Yeah.
move around more, and I can like if we're dealing, especially in the early days, you'd be dealing with crowds that like weren't having you.
Yeah.
I had more freedom to kind of like, hey, like I'm gonna sell you on this band tonight. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we're gonna you might not like us right now, but we got 30 minutes and like seven songs to
Right.
to convince you that, you know, and that was easier to do without being like shackled by a guitar, you know. And I
Yeah.
still like that dynamic. You know, I still like the times that I can just kind of jump out there and I don't know, engage with the crowd a little more, you know.
Yeah. Well, it used to be a half and half. I mean, when I
It
joined the
used to be
band,
half and half. Yeah,
it
you're
was
right.
it was half the set. You weren't singing. You weren't playing guitar, and now it's maybe a song or two,
Hmm.
maybe. Um,
Totally.
but I'm, I love. It's weird to me when we go down to just the one guitar. It's fun. It's whatever. And
Right. Yeah.
I've been a single guitar player in many bands. I've been in guitar partnerships, but with this one in
Hmm.
particular, I like us. I like our thing. It's
Yeah, I like our thing too. There's more options to create that wall of sound that
absolutely,
that we're
absolutely,
that we're talking about, you know?
yeah. And you and I both are guys that there's that improvisational thing that happens in our band that you play things every fucking night that you do change things up, and I love, there's not a lot, but there is
Hmm.
almost every night we are kind of, like, oh shit, there's something that kind of happens between both of us that, like, I'm going to keep that, I'm going to do it tomorrow night too because that was cool. I
Yeah.
love that interplay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
um
Yeah, we lay into parts like here and there or something
yeah,
like something stands out. We're like, oh, it's cool. Or it's cool when you do this or I do this, and and then we do have our moments in between songs that we kind of extended. It gives
yeah,
everybody a little bit of freedom to kind of like, all right, take a breath. The crowd takes a breath, because we can be such a pummeling thing, when we
yeah,
go on stage, where it's just like song after song after song. I think it's good to have that space uh, in the songs for
absolutely.
us and for the audience. I think that's and for just like you said, a song you've played a million times. Like
Yeah, you gotta switch it up.
let's throw a curveball in
Yeah.
here and there.
Which, if any folks are listening that are coming to our shows in Australia with Blink 182, we get to end our set now with a big like a dual guitar jam
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally.
it's always fun.
The old
Uh,
Rise Against. Watch out.
yeah, you gotta watch out Rise Against, boy. Let's get into. I know there's it can be an eye roll from you, but a little bit of gear. We won't get too dorky. My listeners, I'm going to paint a picture. So I was explaining, if you listen to this podcast, you know that I have my brother on here and I got in an argument with my brother about the aesthetics of a specific bass. I was explaining said argument to my guest here, Mr. Tim Mcllrath, and the eye roll, his face rolled, not just his eye, and he basically was like, "Are you done talking yet?" Um, your visage changed, and you were right, and you were correct, because it doesn't fucking matter, but it does to
I'm
me.
sure, I'm sure, man. I'm glad that you know it more than I know it, so I don't have to know it. You know what I mean? It's kind of
It's
like
fucking,
it's like
it's like
it's like
long
for
division.
anybody. It's for anybody who's in like a relationship, like a couple, with a
Yeah,
spouse or whatever.
yeah,
Like there are things that your spouse knows that you're like, okay, you know that, you know how to get to that place. I'm not even
yeah,
gonna waste space in my brain
right,
to remember
right.
that because I'll
To
know
know
I'll know
that
if I'm
shit.
because if I'm on this stage, I'm next to you and you'll know it. But I do. I have like I have when it comes to gear, I have like low gear IQ, as you know. Like
Well,
it
that's
doesn't.
perfectly
I
okay.
don't really. I plug in the same Marshall I've plugged in since I was like 16 years old and play an SG, and I twiddle those knobs till it sounds palatable to me, and then it just start cranking away. And
And you
I'm
know what?
fascinated by gear. You know what I mean? I'm always open to like someone showing me a better way to do things, and
Yeah,
I like we've messed with pedals more the last few years, and I'm always like, oh, it's so
yeah,
cool. And
yeah.
I've come to appreciate pedals more because they're like they can be windows to like different kinds of songwriting. You know what I mean?
Sure,
And
sure.
that's when my light bulb goes off. Where I'm like, oh, I didn't think about pedals like this. To me, they kind of seemed kind of dorky, but like now I see them as like ways to like I don't know. Like Mcilrath
No,
didn't have
you're
pedals. You know what I mean? So I was kind of
you're
like,
right.
I don't need them, but whenever we get
Yeah,
into a studio, we're having fun. And all over the Rise Against records that we've made, most of them, and most of the guitar stuff we've made with Jason Livermore. Shout out
yes.
to Jason Livermore
Jason, shouts
of the
outs.
Blasting Room, great engineer, producer, and maybe mostly known for his mixing abilities.
Sure.
Uh, recent Latin Grammy award-winning
Yeah.
mixer,
So big
Jason
shout out.
Livermore for a band called Molotov. Um, but he's got some high gear IQ,
Yes,
you
he does.
know?
He does.
And so he would always introduce us to different things, and that was always fun. And in those albums that people listen to, there are effects on there. You know what I
and,
mean? That
and to the
like that.
point of where, like, we would, I would add some things to a pedal board to replicate some of those things, but some of those things we would do on our records, and you and me were so pedal adverse for so long,
Hmm.
we just wouldn't address that sound live. We would just
You're right. That we
play.
kind of like relegated it to like a studio
Yeah,
place and
like
not like a
that's
live place. And then
right.
slowly we've kind of come out of that. And then we dumped a lot of it into the lap of our amazing guitar tech, Jeff Bilson, who techs both me and Zach and has for a long time. He's got to
Yeah,
be, if not our longest running crew member, our second longest crew member.
absolutely.
Um,
And man, we would be lost without him. We have been lost without him.
we have been lost without him. He's like,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't want to do a show without Jeff. Um,
yeah,
when he's there, everything's gonna be okay. But we kind of dumped all the effect stuff in his lap,
right.
where he would actually implement them into the songs and stuff like that. Like, hey, make this part sound like this.
Hmm.
I don't want to push a button. I don't want to screw it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And then
Can
he
you do
would do a
this?
lot of that too. But it's cool. And
And
I think we're evolving too
we
as a
are.
band going into like, our 20 something year and then our 10th record. I feel like you and I are both like, oh, like I feel like everything I'm saying is like making me sound super stodgy and averse to any kind of change. You know what I mean? And that may be a fair characterization of me.
Well,
But we're generally open to like,
mhm,
a good idea is a good idea. A good sound is a good sound.
absolutely. And I think thus far, maybe we have been a bit. We have been a bit adverse to change,
We were
and
protective of like the
right.
sound
And
and like,
it's been working, and it's been, like, let's be precious about this thing and not step on it
hmm
too much. But I do like the fact that, and I've talked about it on here as well, that we are dipping our toe into amp profilers. I have been using an analog pedal board on stage, that
hmm
I've been adding to and taking away from. You've been adding pedals live, and definitely in the studio, and definitely in this writing process. And we're even switching up our guitar choices in certain places. But to go back a little bit, you said this amp. So you've one thing you and me had in common, right away, was that we both were lovers of the JCM 900, the Marshall JCM 900.
Yeah.
When I first joined the band, you guys had 2000s, which are
hmm
still a sort of mainstay. And it was sort of the same reason as me. I went to Guitar Center in the 90s and I bought a 900. That was the amp that was there.
that was
You
there. Yeah.
That was what was there. You did that, and then you did it in the 2000s. It was a JCM 2000, and then that's what you've
The
grown
transition
accustomed
to the
to.
2000 was also, I love the 900 and even the 800. And we started going places where we had to rent gear, like
Right.
whether it was like a one-off radio show, a festival somewhere. And the 800s were impossible to find to rent, or at least we couldn't find them. And 900s were also hard to find. And you'd end up with a 2000. You know what I mean? They
Right.
were at that point, especially probably like, I don't know, mid 2000s, whatever. That was the most available head. And so I think by default, we're like, all right, that's fine. We'll just play a 2000. And
Yeah.
then we started playing 2000s a lot more because it was like, well, if we're gonna end up with this head renting it in Europe or Australia or wherever, I might as well get really used to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And dial it in the way I want it to sound. And next thing you know, we had tons of 2000s. Just kind of like
Yeah.
they were just really easy to
We did.
they were easy to get, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or get a
Right.
replacement of, and they weren't fickle, you know what I mean? Like an
Yeah.
old 800's kind of fickle and overheats and doesn't travel well sometimes.
But
Um,
I think it was after the end game record, you and me both made a concerted effort to like go back to 900s, and we started using 900s, and we sent the 2000s home, because I remember those were like there was four 2000s when I joined Rise Against, and we just
mm,
you've always said it was like I jumped onto a moving like merry-go-round. It just
yeah,
kept going, and I think at a certain point we were like, let's just be 900s, and we were both using those for quite a while, and shit, I mean, still. And then I have my hot rodded JMP that I've had forever, but
yeah.
you have always been able to walk up to no matter what amp and dial in your tone, and I, for the life of me, and it's a true testament to like tone is in the hands. You sound like you no matter what. No matter what. There's a mid-range thing that happens with the way you play a guitar, and you could be on any amp on any fucking guitar, and I can't do it. I cannot make my amp sound the way you make your sound. And you can walk up to every amp and just go, and it sounds like you. It's fucking crazy. And I've always been. I think it's just in your goddamn fingers. It's impressive.
I think there's something, well, thank you, but I think there's something to that, like something that just the way you play, you know what I mean? The way you
Yeah.
feel, the way you crank that chord out, you know what I mean? Like the amount of pressure you squeeze into the neck, that kind of thing. I,
Yeah.
I and I don't have an exact science to any of that, but I was, I think we were talking to Chris Hanna from Propaganda,
Yeah.
and someone was asking like, what kind of guitar tone like do you go for? And his answer was not shitty. And to me, for some reason that made so much sense to me. Like I'm
Yeah.
just turning those knobs till it's not shitty.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I mean? And as soon as it's not shitty, it's like, all right, yeah, this is great. Let's move on. You know?
and it really reduces, like, to each their own and their own thing, but I've always wanted to be the guy that's in the middle. Like, I want to know just enough about all this stuff, but I don't want to know too much, because that gets, a, it takes the fun and the fancy out of all of it,
Hmm.
and b, I know I can go ad nauseum about this shit, but it is an eye roll. I get the eye roll, and when somebody knows way too much, like, of fuses and tubes and
Hmm.
diodes, and how much wattage and all that, that's when I glaze over. So I don't want to know that much, and I also don't want to be that kind of a virtuoso guy either. I still want to have an ignorance to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in it
Yeah, it
and go
is.
down a rabbit hole. And maybe the rabbit hole is your end, like the means to the end. I mean, maybe the rabbit hole is what you enjoy if you're that kind of
Sure.
like collector player. And if that is like God bless you. You know what I mean? Like go
Yeah.
for it. I have one of my best friends like collects the weirdest guitars. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
loves it. And he's always telling me I got this crazy custom shop, whatever. And it looks to him like that thing is nonsense, dude. But
Yeah.
if it makes you happy, like go for it. For me, I
Right.
walk into it like I'm like, what can it's more like, what can I do with this guitar? It's
Right.
I think we were talking to Tom Morello at one point, and I share his philosophy. I think he was telling us this whole story of his Arm the Homeless guitar. And you know more about it than I do. It was like, I forget what model it was, but it doesn't even have a brand name on it, you know?
Yeah. It's
And
a company out of LA that it was like these guys that made kind of shredder guitars for shredder players called Performance.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we were talking about guitars, someone was asking him how many guitars he has, and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember him kind of stopping the person and just being like, it doesn't matter how many guitars I have. It doesn't even matter how nice of a guitar that I own. The guitar that I play, like, is not considered like a top of the line guitar. Like, it matters what you do with it, you
Yeah.
know? And he was like, at some point, I wanted to stop upgrading and going, trying something new and just sit down with this instrument and just play it and make it work for
Yeah.
me. And then write what he would go on to write the best songs of our generation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
generation defining songs. And I was like, that's so great. And such good advice for people who are like on this never ending search for the perfect guitar, which is a fun, search to be on. And you shouldn't close that door. But at the same time, if you want, just play the damn instrument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Play what you got.
You're right.
Some of the greatest songs people ever heard were written on, some of the shittiest equipment you ever heard of also. You know
Well,
what I
it's
mean?
because before Morello, I've always said Tom Morello was the Eddie Van Halen of our generation, and there was Eddie Van Halen before him who used a guitar called Frankenstein that was just pieces of other guitars that he put together, and he just
Right.
stopped fucking with it one day, and you know and reinvented rock and roll music with this thing that
Right.
looked, it had holes drilled in it, and it was
Totally.
to anybody else it would have been a piece of shit that probably would have been thrown in the garbage.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, and that you said it perfect. Stop fucking with it. Play it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just
Right.
plug it in and play it.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do, if that's your goal is to like write songs and like, communicate your thing to people. Like just
Yeah.
play the damn guitar. You don't need to have a nice guitar, you know.
Yeah. And
I mean,
you have always had that ethic, and it's I've been on the other end of it. And then at certain times with, like, what would TM do? It's been like, okay, wait, I'm getting in the weeds here. Even with, like, I'm a guy that in my spare time I want to take lessons and learn other styles and stuff, and
yeah,
forgetting that, and I found with that you do get in that hole of, like, you start forgetting who you are because you're trying
yeah,
to learn this other thing. And, like, wait, I've got to remember what I actually do.
totally, yeah, yeah, and like, always be learning and striving, and I'm
Sure.
not saying don't ever buy a new guitar, you know what I mean, but like, It's try to be self-aware that you're not getting into the weeds, you're not focusing on the wrong things, that you're not like, you
Absolutely.
know, just getting lost in it, and like you said, forgetting like why you started playing and your identity. Like I still, yeah, I the guitar that I think of as like, yeah, that Kalamazoo was like my first, but the first guitar I connected with, which was the second guitar I ever owned, was that 82 SG, and that's
Yeah.
what I kind of spent my whole adolescence playing. I didn't have any money to buy another instrument anyway, but B, it was with me on all my first songs and my first bands and that kind of thing. And I've gone on to own, I don't know how many guitars I own, but I own a bunch. And, but I've gone back to playing that 82 SG. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Isn't
Didn't
it on?
really need, what's that?
Isn't it on tour with us right now?
Yeah, I think it's on tour with us right now. I kind of got it
Yeah.
kind of fixed it up. You got me some nice pickups for it.
Yeah. Shouts out to Derek Duncan,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
who
Yeah.
is a sponsor of this podcast.
Oh, there you go. See, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
get their pickups. Those pickups are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They even impressed the shop I took it to, which is shout out to Chicago Music Exchange.
Yeah.
Phil over there takes care of a lot of my instruments, the ones that Bilston doesn't take care of,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we live in different parts of the country. Super impressive pickups. But yeah, like that's what I look at it all, and like here I am at 45, and like I'm gonna sit down today and play the guitar I played at 16 years old, when
It's
like in a
great.
basement with like Neil Hennessy, just like
It's fucking great.
cranking up our Marshalls and seeing how loud we can get, and
Yeah.
making them sound cool, and starting this whole path.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fucking great. I think I know this answer too. And I ask everybody, do you have one that got away, one that got stolen, anything, piece of gear, guitar?
Oh,
I'm pretty sure I know. I think a few of these, but you could have pawned it, you could have lost it, you could have gotten stolen,
huh.
or something you got rid of. I can think of one.
What are you thinking of? Piece of gear?
Yes, you. I can think of a few with you.
Okay, then you
I
know
can
more
think of.
than me.
I can think of something that got broken.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And I
The
can think of
hummingbird?
something. And I can think of something you got rid of.
Okay, you tell
Okay.
me.
The thing that got broken was your one of a kind black hummingbird from Gibson.
Yes.
And
Yes.
wasn't it a loading dock situation?
Yeah, like it was in like a real deal flight case too. So for anybody who's out there thinking that we're amateurs just throwing acoustic guitars in the back of semi trucks,
Right.
it was in like a real deal case. It had traveled around the world with us a lot, and then we pulled into Calgary, to the Great Eagle Casino. Is
Right.
that Calgary? Calgary, I
I
think.
think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Calgary or Edmonton? I'm gonna screw it up. Anyway, somewhere in the tundra, and yeah, like a lot of cases in the back of the semi had fallen. I think
Yeah.
either in the middle of the night or during the loading, and they all landed on the guitar case that held my Gibson Hummingbird with no hummingbird. It was all black.
Right.
It was a custom made for, I think, for somebody else who didn't want it, and then I ended up with it. Great guitar, and the thing, and if people might remember, because it said Occupy on it around the time of the
Right.
Occupy Wall Street movement,
That's right.
and then it got smashed to fucking pieces,
It got
just
smashed to
pieces.
pieces. Oh,
We
it's
actually left
so
it at the casino that night. I think
we
we
did.
signed it, and then they hung it up on their wall just in
That's
pieces. So
right.
it's still sitting there at the Grey Eagle
That
Resort.
was it was heartbreaking. It was so beautiful. It was such a cool looking guitar.
It was a cool. I forgot about that one. It was a cool looking guitar. And now I play the Martin D35, which is my one with the Chicago flag sticker on it,
Right. It's a
which I
great
really
guitar.
like. And then I also have a Martin Streetmaster, which has been really good
That
too.
guitar is
Have you
great.
even seen my new guild that I
No,
got?
I didn't. You told me about it. I no
Oh
wait,
yeah,
or did I see it? No, I have
it's
not
pretty
seen it.
cool. It's like a 71 guild, because I had the Gibson, I had the Jackson Brown Gibson
Right,
that I wasn't falling in love with, and so
right.
this guild is really cool. I never played a guild before, so
Just aesthetically, I love the big headstock. I just think it's great.
yeah,
You know.
it's kind of a jumbo body too.
Yeah, it's
So
just Neil Young. You know.
I went there to buy something else, and then I played that one, and it just sounded
That's how
way
it always.
better. And
That's how it
like
always works.
my wife was with me, and who she's not a guitar player, but she's just like a layman with ears. You know what I mean?
Uh
And she's like, that thing sounds better. And I'm like, you're,
huh.
which you kind of trust, because in the end, that's all that matters, right?
Totally.
Is how it hits somebody's ears who has no baggage with like the
Yeah.
year and the model and the
Yeah.
size of it or whatever. They just like, well, this one sounds better than that one.
I'm going to
That,
believe that opinion over anyone's, really. You know?
it's kind of true. It's like someone was saying, I was listening to an interview with a comedian saying, is the audience ever wrong? Like it was an audience that wasn't liking his jokes. And he's like, is the audience ever wrong? And you're right. And the guy was like, no, like the audience is always right. If you
Yeah.
can't make them laugh, it's your fault. It's like you've done something.
Well,
And it's like,
and we are tainted by this thing that we've been programmed. Like if you came to me with a Gibson Les Paul, I'm going to go, that sounds great. I'm going to be
mhm.
predetermined to say that sounds great. But a layman who doesn't know, they could go, well, that doesn't sound really good. And you're like, it's a
Yeah,
Les
we have
Paul.
baggage. We have like decades
Exactly.
of baggage with brand names and years and
Exactly.
copies and imitations and the ones that are made in the USA versus made in Mexico versus made in wherever. Where what we need to be doing as guitar players is having like blind taste tests.
Absolutely. I
Because then it's
fully agree
like
with you.
totally, it's like, well, I'm playing this Yamaha out of a Charvel head and a Jackson cabinet.
Oh, they
Which
didn't play.
some people might dismiss, but it's like, what if it sounds great?
What if it
You
sounds
know?
great? There used to be Charvel heads. There were. Wasn't that
Yeah, the
first
reason that
logo?
the reason I even said that was because that was I think it was my buddy Jay Wood who played in my first band Baxter with Neil with me. I think he had a Charvel like the whole half stack, the head and the cab. And
Yeah.
then Nick Neal bought it from him because Jay became our bass player. And then I want to say Chris McCoggan from the Lawrence Arms ended up playing it in the early days of the Lawrence Arms. And I swear I still see that Charvel cabinet at Lawrence Arms shows. So it might still be floating around, but it's got an interesting tone to it. It has kind of like a little bit of a Mesa Boogie
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing
yeah.
happening,
Yeah,
I mean,
like
you
the
don't see them. I don't even know if that's still a company or anything, but that was like back in the day, you didn't have money to choose what you wanted.
right.
There wasn't the internet either. So it was like you went to the guitar store, you probably couldn't afford the new shit. So whatever somebody had recently sold the pawn shop or the guitar place, we didn't have Guitar Center back in the day.
Yeah, it's true.
We had a place called Guitar Plus in my town actually, which I think became a Guitar Center at some point.
Probably.
But yeah, like you just bought the used thing,
Yeah,
you know.
and it was like whatever they had a deal on. Maybe they would have a floor full of like Charvel fucking half stacks or crate
Totally.
or whatever. And that's guess what? That's what you were going to get because they'd let them go for nothing. That's why
Yeah,
everybody had PV for so long because PV was fucking ubiquitous. It was everywhere, you know?
totally. And that's why every band you started, your PA was just your guitar player's first amp that
Yep.
he's not using anymore. And
Yep.
like a Radio Shack microphone because no one ever thought to buy a microphone and
Yep.
realized how expensive they were.
We need to do a Rise Against show with just cobbled together gear and one of us playing out of a PA. We need to
You
do
know what?
that.
One of the coolest moments of my life was it was when Prophets of Rage was playing a lot of shows. So Prophets of Rage
Yeah.
was Morello and Brad and Timmy, and then playing with Be Real and Chuck D,
Right.
all-star supergroup, doing Rage songs, then also some Cypress Hill songs, also Public Enemy songs, also some MC5 songs, some covers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to the show in Chicago. They played the Big Shed, our Big Shed in Tinley Park. And I'm at dinner with my wife and some friends. We're just gonna go sit in the seats and watch the show. And Morello was like, "Hey, you want to come and sing a song tonight?" And I was like, I'm like, I wasn't planning on this, you know what I mean? But like, okay, what
Yeah.
do you got? Anyway, cut to like, I'm next thing you know, I'm in a rehearsal room in the back of this big shed. It's like one of the dressing rooms. Full practice amp setup, like what we're talking about. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the PA was like the crappy little PA you had when you were
It's awesome.
when you were 16. It's this little guitar amp, it's like a kind of like probably a B team drum set. But fucking Chuck D walks in, Be Real walks in, like
Yep.
three-fourths of Rage Against the Machine walks in, and that was with Aaron Bruno from AWOL Nation too. And next thing you know, we're just jamming an MC5 song all together on these like just these terrible little amp, like bad PA.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those moments where like this was so cool. Like that
Yeah.
actually that moment, jamming with those guys in that room, just like the seven of us or whatever, was cooler than going onto that stage later that night because it was
Absolutely.
like just I'm like this feels so much like it did when I was 16 years old in my parents' basement, except I'm here with like the guys from Rage and like Public
Yeah.
Enemy and Cypress Hill and Aaron from AWOL.
Because now, how big this all gets, or whatever we all get to do, and we've been so lucky. Our band has had some success, and we've been so lucky. It's still just getting into a room with some other guys and going, "What do you got?" Or let's work on this, or let's play MC5. And it's that thing that we did when we were 14. That we're still
Hmm.
14 as soon as that happens. That's why I love this. That's why I love we do what we
Totally.
do. Um,
I've never shortly after that, Chuck D tweeted Tim from Rise Against is too dope.
I remember that.
And I haven't I keep telling myself I'm gonna find it and like frame it because that might be the coolest thing that I'd
You
ever want to like show my
should.
16-year-old self.
You fucking should.
By the way, super nice guy, by the way, just like such a
Yeah.
amazing just spirit of a
Well, I
person.
remember we played with some shows with him, and I was too afraid to talk to him, and then I did, and he was the nicest.
Intimidating guy.
Fucking yeah,
Intimidating
absolutely.
guy.
He's
Yeah.
Chuck D. He's
He's
Chuck D.
Chuck D.
He's Chuck D.
Yep.
Well, buddy, I won't. We're at 45. I don't want to keep you
Oh,
too much
okay.
longer. But I am so lucky to be in a guitartnership with you,
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
I love you, and man, I love what we do, and I hope we keep
I
doing
love
it
that
and
you get to
tour.
talk about guitars on this whole thing. Have you learned like a ton just from like other
Yes,
people? Like
absolutely.
your head must be spinning when you get off these things with people like, well, I play this, and you're like, I never even heard of that.
It absolutely is. I can't tell you how much I Google when I'm done. Like, oh, what the fuck were they talking? I do it, and I love it. And it's basically, a lot of the times I get to talk to people that I know, but then there's people that I don't know that I kind of do know because of this fraternity of this thing that we all do, and we've all
Right.
gotten this rarefied air we've gotten to breathe. And I've made so many friends. I've made so many friends on this podcast that like, we'll be playing festivals this summer or whoever, and I'll be like, oh, I know that guy now, and I can go over and say hi to their camp, and
Hmm.
it's really just been so rewarding. It's weird to have something that's mine because Rise has been such a bubble, and it's such a, like you say, a Voltron.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I'm in such a thing with three other people, and
Right.
we kind of keep our heads down and we just keep pushing forward. To have something
Hmm.
that is singular to me is also really interesting and weird to navigate, but it's been
Yeah.
rewarding.
Well, guitar playing, and especially in our genre, is so cool because it's so different than other forms of playing music. Like
Yeah.
there's like no one I bet no one you're talking to has had formal training, right? In playing
Right.
guitar. It's just
Right.
not an instrument that lends itself to formal training. If you are somebody that's going to do formal training, you do violin, you do piano, you do whatever. And those people are amazing to me, by the way. My daughter is a classically trained
Yeah.
violinist. Like it's
Yep.
incredible what she can do. But they all go through the same training in the same school, and so they all have the same words for the same chords for the same notes. You know what I mean? Like they can show up. So somebody from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra can show up to like Europe or Australia or wherever and just like fit
Yeah.
right in and do their thing. And that chances are they speak the same language. Everyone you're talking to and you and I, like the guitar is like we all come into it in a different way.
Absolutely.
We are making it up as we go along. And
Yep.
so you get to hear the stories of someone making it up. Like Johnny Resnick's great story is that he had no idea how to tune a guitar when he bought a guitar.
Right.
And so he would just make up tunings, whatever sounded good. And that's why Goo Goo Dolls songs, even if they just sound like pop songs, they are dealing with some of the most complex tuning
Tuning.
you've ever heard of because he didn't know what to do, but it didn't stop him. And like we all had a different instrument, our different instruments were for like the different people we played with. You were forced to kind of figure it out yourself, and everyone kind of cracked the code in a different way.
Well, and I think you just cracked the code on this podcast. And what makes it so interesting to me is that that's what this podcast is about. It's talking to
Yeah,
every different person about their journey to this instrument and their relationship to it, and how they are still navigating it, how they navigated their way to it in the first place. It's this. It's almost this forensic study in a weird way
right.
of everybody's passion, and it's endlessly interesting.
Totally. It's a
Yeah,
treasure map that we're all trying to get to the X, but everybody took a different way.
absolutely,
And that
absolutely.
and everyone's story is so interesting
Yeah,
because it's
and
like,
and
man, I
and
didn't.
and and you and I's journey together for 17 years, but also where we were before it, and me figuring that all out to sort of pull your way and you pull my way, so we could, do the most effective thing on stage together. It's all there, man. It's all there.
Amen,
Yeah.
sister.
Amen, sister. I love you,
Hmm.
buddy, and I'll uh,
Cool.
I'll I'll see you in Australia.
I'll see you in Australia.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Cool.
And there it is. There it is. You got to hear a little bit of how the sausage is made, so to speak. A little window into our friendship. Man, it's going strong. 17 years, in this world, and in the band. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to keep a relationship. It's like a marriage, as you heard him say. But I, with my friendship and relationship with that guy in particular, nothing's forced, nothing's strained. We get along. We care about each other. We like each other. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky. If you got to play guitar with someone else, make sure it's somebody that you really like and whose work you really admire. And I've checked both of those boxes. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed him. I know I did, and I do. And I hope you keep listening. This is our 5th season. Geez, I didn't get to say that up top, but man, 5th season. So thank you so much for coming back. We've got a bunch of really interesting things going on this season, a bunch of really cool interviews coming up. And I hope you stay tuned. I hope you keep listening. I'm going to thank the guys over at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals. Find out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. Thank you guys so much for sticking by us. We've been working together for quite a while now, and I'm so happy. And I'm also going to thank the folks over at DistroKid. Find out what they're doing. They are helping guys like us, the artist, the musician, get their stuff on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. That's the DistroKids folks helping you self-release. So find out more of what they're doing and check out DistroKid. Thank you guys very much. Here at the end, I'm going to leave you with a wonderful example of Tim's guitar work. We got to talk about it a lot in this, but like I said, with Tim, if it's a riff that guy has written, it's never what it seems. It's never what you think you're hearing. There's always something else going on. That's why I'm such a fan of his guitar playing. And this is the intro riff to Survive. This is no exception. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So check this out for yourself. I promise you it's not what you think it is if you're trying to learn how to play it back at home. So check this out. This is Survive. This is off of the Sufferer and the Witness album. This was before I joined the band. You'd think I would have chosen a riff of from a record that I'm on, but I gotta give credit where credit's due. This is just a great riff. I've always been a fan of it. So check this riff out. Check out Rise Against. Check out Tim Mcllrath. And thank you once again for listening. Let's talk soon.
Give up on your life, or you spend
sunshine. A perfect world on a perfect